Ladies and gentlemen, they say the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs is a matter of many factors: momentum, luck, divine providence, karma, all different matters. The 1979 playoffs was one of the most interesting of the modern era, and this podcast is 41 years in the making. I can finally tell the tale of what happened between Game 7, Boston-Montreal, where Montreal won in overtime in the semifinal clincher, and Game 1 and Game 2 of the Ranger-Montreal final series. That all the momentum was with New York until a significant incident occurred and took it all away. So let's just break this down. Montreal entering Game 7, Ken Dryden, our lead goalie for many years, the All-Star, was shaky. And it showed in Game 7. Boston took several leads in the game. Entering the third period, Montreal was behind by 2 goals. Fell behind again late in the third period on a terrible goal given up by Dryden to Rick Middleton, but then Lafleur on a feed for Lemaire scored a famous goal past Gilbert. Yvon Lambert then scored an overtime and a feed from Hull and Tremblay to knock off Boston, where Boston should have won the game. Now, Rick Middleton, in an interview I did with him at the 2010 Boston Bruin alumni game in Woodstock, New Brunswick, told me that Dryden was so shaky that game he thought for sure Montreal was beatable. And if you remember that game, Middleton had a lot of points, but unfortunately Middleton was on the ice for all the comeback goals and the overtime winner for Montreal. So entering the final, Montreal lost the first game to the Rangers, where very shaky Ken Dryden gave up the majority of goals. Michel Larocque, who never played a playoff game for Montreal when Dryden was in the lineup, last time I think he played was the 74 quarterfinal series against the Rangers. I think it was Game 6, by the way. Bowman decided to make a change, put him in for the third period. He played somewhat decent. Now, he announced 2 days later, on May 15th, 1979, that Larocque would be the starter. We turned on Hockey Night in Canada. Dick Irvin, Dan Kelly, and Jerry Pinder were explaining what was going on, why Larocque was going to start. In between the first promo and the return for the anthem, Dick Irvin said in the last 60 seconds, of all things, Dougie Risebrough into warm-up threw a rising shot against Larocque, hit him straight on in the face, and he went down like a sack of potatoes. Larocque went to the hospital with a concussion, couldn't start the game. Bowman had to start Dryden in Game 2 because Richard Sevigny, who never played a game for Montreal that year, would become a Vezina Trophy winner with Montreal later on in the 1980s, was serving as the backup. Never played and went with Dryden. Dryden had a shaky first start to the game, gave up 2 goals to Anders Hedberg on a feed from Steve Vickers at 1:02, and the very beautiful Ron Duguay put the Rangers up 2-0. Now, you're saying to yourself, Rangers are ahead 2-0 in Game 2 after winning Game 1. Dryden is shaky. What's going to happen after this? Montreal shut the door to the rest of the way that game by scoring 6 consecutive goals. Lambert and Lafleur had scored the tied up in that first period. Then Gady scored the third, the game winner for Montreal to go ahead 3-2. Then Chuck Lemaire scored in the second period, and Napier scored in the third period. So you're saying to yourself, they're going back to New York. They're going to have a good chance. The Rangers are going to probably have a slight comeback. But it was all Montreal in New York. They won 4-1 in Game 3. Game 4, Montreal scored twice in overtime. Robinson had scored a goal that went through the New York net, and Savard scored later on. They won 4-3, and they came home winning 4-1 on Lemaire's Stanley Cup winner. So the series came down to this. If Larocque would have played in Game 2, would the series would have been different? Well, as soon as Dryden settled, or somewhat settled, Montreal outscored the Rangers 15-8 the rest of the way. They won 2 games on the road. They averaged 4 goals a game in the last 3 contests, where they're having trouble scoring goals against Boston. So, I mean, momentum is everything. But what's kind of funny in that game, too, Danny Gallivan was sick. And by my memory, he didn't finish the game. Dan Kelly was doing some of the play-by-play announcing for that game, which was kind of a rarity. because Kelly was just as good as Danny Galvin, but he was sort of the American version of Danny Galvin, but that's neither here nor there. But if you are sitting down with a case of beer and a pizza, May 15th, 1979, you hate the Habs, and you say, oh, they're done, you took Dryden out, and you come back from commercial, so he's back in net because Larocque just got killed by Doug Risebrough, and of all people. No offense to Doug Risebrough, he didn't have the greatest shot in the NHL history, ladies and gentlemen. Sure, he was an accurate shot, but he was a grinder. But Buddy Larocque never really talked about it afterwards, and soon after he found himself, not soon after, but shortly after, he found himself out of Montreal in Toronto on a very, very rough leave team of the early 80s. Larocque had a very terrible playoff against Minnesota in 1980, and he played Denny Oro in Game 7, and that was it for the Stanley Cup run, or potential 5 straight. So again, you get a combination of factors. Dryden was playing shitty, Montreal was playing shitty, the Rangers had momentum, Larocque went in, he was starting to get hot, Risebrough hit him, and the big loser of this, of course, was New York Ranger fans and players. And in the words of Phil Esposito, he said, maybe we overachieved. There was an interview, I think, on Hockey Night in Canada. It might have been with Esposito or one of the Maloney's. He said, we overachieved. We went a long way. And I thought for sure that the Rangers would win a Stanley Cup in the early 80s, but that's another factor altogether. The Islanders were starting to rise after choking in the late 70s. They finally got Butch Goring, and the rest is history. But if the Islanders wouldn't have got Butch Goring, who knows what would have happened. But the Rangers could have easily defeated Montreal that year, but the fact was, they got the last of the ghosts of the form to come back and let them win one last time. Anyway. And if Lemaire would have stayed, they made Gainey Conn Smythe Trophy winner. Should have been Lemaire. If Lemaire were to stayed, he already said he might be going to Europe before the end of the series. It was a lot of drama in that series. Anyway, if you see Doug Risebrough in your travels, ask him exactly what he thought about winning the Stanley Cup from Montreal indirectly. You might not like the answer you get because he said, what do you mean? It wasn't my fault. You would probably say I had a terrible shot. But 1 in a million. Thanks for listening. Bye.